Alright guys, we covered our logic brick movement system, which works, but definitely isn't advanced enough for something I'd like to do. So we're going to cover a little bit of Python scripting and how to get that set up. So what I've done, and there's a link, there better be a link in the description, remind me if there's not, to download this movement system that uses Python. And it's one of the best FPS templates I've seen. If we do just a quick run through, it has movement with the mouse. You can hold shift to walk. You can run around. Jumping works. You can go sideways, diagonal. It does have bullet holes, and it has array collision system. As far as I can tell, I didn't dig into that part too much right now. I was just doing it for the movement system. And right click to zoom in, has a crosshairs, so a HUD, a basic HUD. So yeah, it's definitely has a muzzle flash, so I definitely think it's definitely a good place to start. One of the issues that apparently is the crouch is supposed to be left control, but I don't know what happened, but it doesn't work very well. You can't like sit and crouch, or you can't just hit the crouch button. You have to hit crouch and then walk forward, and then like when you're just standing there and hit the crouch button, you don't crouch, which to me means your crouch system doesn't really work. So you have to be moving, and we can of course change that. And we're actually going to I wanted a different crouch system where when you hit the crouch button, you go down, and then you stay down until you hit the crouch button again. I don't want to hold down my crouch button. So we're going to cover, in probably the second part of this tutorial, depends on how long everything takes, we're going to cover how to set that up so that you can have a different crouch system. Alright, the first thing we're going to do is go into scripting view. And we're going to maximize this, and I'm going to go to, right now we're just going to cover the walk.py. And what I have here is, I'm going to copy this in. So this is all my comments about pretty much all of it, and I haven't finished all the comments on it yet, but we're going to go ahead. This of course is my first time doing any Python programming, so I'll do my best, but maybe you can go to Code Academy and start learning the basics of Python so that you know a little bit about it. And of course I'll be doing my best to give you accurate information about this, but I did not create this template, so hopefully I'll interpret everything correctly. But let's start. I don't think that X is supposed to be there. So essentially from Blender Game Engine, import logic as game logic. So anytime, that just means you're importing the logic part of the Blender Game Engine, and you're importing as a name game logic. So if we do a Control F for game logic, we will find in the very next line cont, which equals controller. It's just a shortened name for it. But we're assigning it to that variable. So game logic dot get current controller. So that means that we're going into game logic, which is technically, I think the way Python does it, BGE dot logic. So we're getting the current controller. Now the controller is going to be let's actually go to game logic. Controller is going to be any one of these. I believe any one of these is going to be any controller there. So now the owner is own, W equals controller owner. So that says these controllers, whatever it is, the owner of them. So if we go to, there's a new little trick I learned, hit period, and maybe start screencasting. Hit period to reset your, so now like if you have trouble with it zooming in crazy, you hit period, and bam, it zooms in and zooms out nicely, which is something I really wish I had known earlier, but hey, that's the steep learning curve for Blender. So alright, so what was I saying? Oh yep, cont, which is game logic dot get current controller, controller dot owner equals own. So see how we selected this? So we have that selected, and that means that if we do walk.py, that means whenever we say owner, that's talking about the owner of this controller, of these controllers, which is viewer. So that would be viewer. Alright. Now G1 equals controller dot sensors. So that's saying these are our sensors. Okay. So that's our actual controller. Okay, yeah. Controller get current controller. Okay, so when I'm saying get current controller, well, I'm learning stuff on the fly here. Get current controller, that means this controller, so viewer. So that means owner is controller owner, so that means viewer. There we go. So G1 equals controller dot sensors G1. So that means what you're going to do is you're going to scroll down and you're going to say G1 right there. That's our ray. And as far as I can tell, there's 4 little ray sensors. As far as I can tell, they're ground sensors, and that means that whenever anything gets negative, when it's these are positive when they let's see, if they do not exceed 0.540 away from the ground. So they're positive if they're not more than 0.450. So then if they're too far above the ground, they'll activate this else statement. We'll cover that later. So we're G1, we're assigning it to a variable. Controller dot sensors G1 positive. So what we're saying right now, like this is different. The dot positive on the end changes it from like these sensors, which means G1, whenever we say G1, we mean that ray sensor is positive. Like when we say jump, we're just saying that equals that controller. We can say, I don't think they have a dot negative in this namespace, but they don't need it. And I don't know if namespace is the right word for Python, but what we would do is just do if not positive. So that's how you would do, yeah, see right there, if not positive right there. So alright, so that's assigning those 4 ray sensors right there to G1, G2, G3, and G4. Jump is controller.sensors space, so that would just be back to there, space right there. So, and it goes by the name that you name it in your logic block. So make sure you have it named correctly. And if you change the name here, it won't work in the script. So it's good to make sure that works. And now we're switching from controller.sensors to controller.actuators, and that's just actuators which are on this side of the logic brick setup. So we're doing actuator is floor move and crouch, idle and run. So then OWNC is the crouch owner. They own the crouch animation, which is knees, so it always changes. Alright, changes by the object. So this is just our speed and our jump speed. Let's go ahead and plug this up a little bit. Alright, the square root of 2 over 2 is just, that literally is what the square root of 2 over 2 is. I'm not quite sure why they have that exact, maybe that's the exact number in real life that you can run sideways. I don't know, but jump speed equals 0. That means they initially set this variable jump speed, J speed I should say, to 0. So unless we press the jump button, our jump speed will be set to 0. So alright, so this is the main start of our logic here. Now that we have all the variables defined and set up, we're going to go back to our main logic. So if G1 or G2 or G3 or G4, so that's if any of the ground sensors are within 0.54 blender units. So if we select one of these, and it's G1, so if any of them are true, so because this isn't inverted, so it sends a true pulse when it's within 0.54 feet of the ground, or blender units from the ground. If any of those are true, then we start a main loop. And as far as I think this is Python, definitely straight Python, so I think that's how Python has things set up with the colons, which I've never seen anywhere else really. I've seen semicolons in when I do my little bit of Perl, but alright, so they're saying if, and this is, as far as I can tell, indents are very important in Python. I may be wrong, but this is our entire if block right here. So that's what happens if any of those four sensors are within that distance from the ground. If they are not, then they do this. And own rel equals 1, which means nothing's going to happen. If rel, let me see, own.rel, let me see, that was in there somewhere, hold on. Rel is a game property, I think it's on this. Yeah. Rel is, as far as I can tell, it's a variable that allows movement or disallows movement. So if we go back to our script, as far as I can tell, the ownRel reactivates your ability to move after you leave the ground. Because if you jump in the air and go past this, it's going to go else. So you can, when you spawn, you'll be able to walk around and everything just fine because you'll be able to get into this loop right here. But if you don't, let's say you jump, and that means this will go past the 0.45 view. And once it goes past, it's going to kick us right out of this. Like we'll go in the air, and then it's going to kick us out of this and go back to this, and it's going to deactivate act, which is, let's see if I can find that here. Act. Oh, there's property. That's not quite it. Hold on just a second. Oh, I completely forgot. They put act as floor move, so it's going to deactivate floor move. So you're not going to be able to move. So once you jump off the floor, it's going to go into the else, and then it's never going to reinitialize your ability to move once you hit the ground again. That's why they have to have the own rel equals 1. That allows you to move. So let's start with this. If left control, positive, left control is going to be controller.sensors left control, which is your crouch. So if the user is holding down left control to crouch, then slow the speed to 2 from 6. So they're dropping the speed. You can't go as fast when you're crouched. And the way they have it set up is OwnC. OwnC is the owner of the crouch actuator, which will be knees. And let me go back to, let me show you what we're talking about here. Crouch. They have this on, it's an action, they're playing an action, which is just a crouch animation, and they're doing property instead, so that tells you what frame it's going to be, and they have it set up over on the, it's going to be on the knees thing itself, which I believe is somewhere in here. There we are. So frame, that's right there is frame, and that's essentially just telling us what frame to play. So when you're standing and hit crouch, like where it did absolutely nothing, that just means it's going to go to frame 2 because it's going to add 1, and that's going to be it. Then it's going to reset. But if you're holding down your walk button, if you're holding down your forward speed button, it's going to keep adding those frames together. It's not going to subtract those frames, so you're going to keep going all the way down till you get to 20. So let's go ahead and play that again so we can. So you're going to hit play, and when you hold down the crouch button right now, like I'm holding down the crouch button right now, and it's going to do nothing because you see it goes up and down. That's one frame. It's tiny little bounce, you can barely see that. It's going to nothing, but once you hold that down and walk forward, that's when all of the frames go. But since you, and then here, one sec. So you're crouched now, and what it's doing is it's going through that loop, Here, let's go back to this. What you're doing is it's going through the entire loop, because if those sensors are still active, and it's going to do that until you either walk with the crouch negative, or you keep walking with the crouch positive. So it kind of is a sticky thing. It's hard to explain. Programming is not my forte, but alright, so that's essentially what it's doing. So it's going from, you hit the crouch button and it only goes one, then you hit the forward button while holding the crouch button. That keeps it, if you're just holding the crouch button, it's going to go left control positive, great, there's -1, bam, you're done, you're good to go. And then it's 19, it's going to be stored as 19. Frame is going to equal 19, and then once you let go of crouch, it's going to go, bam, it's not positive, bam, it's going to subtract 1 off it, and it's going to go back to, sorry, it's going to be stuck at 2. Sorry, it's going to be stuck at 2. And then it's going to go back to 1 when you release it. But if you hold down the crouch button, it's going to go to 2, and then you hit the forward button while holding down, it's going to slowly click down these frames. It's going to go, or click up these frames, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and you're going to crouch more and more as you hold down another button. Not the way I like to do it, but well, we'll in our next one we'll be changing that to do a different way of crouching. So so that's that. Complicated, I know. And you know, if left control is not positive, and if left control, yeah, is not positive at all, go ahead and deactivate the crouch. So, alright. This one's fairly easy. If shift is held down, slow down to your walk speed. So this next one is f speed equals speed. Speed is going to be defined up here. Speed is 6. So forward speed is speed times the forward positive minus the back positive. So f speed or forward speed takes a walking, running, crouch speed and multiplies it by a W and S key pressure to equal our forward backward speed. And then that's our side speed. How that's calculated? That's, you know, by multiplying the A and D key pressure equal to a right left speed. So if we have forward speed and side speed, then we're going to take if we're walking forward and sideways, it's going to take our forward speed and times it by square root of 2/2, which they have, which is variable set up to point. I'm not sure why they didn't just do like 0.7 or something like that. They could do that easily. I'm not sure why, but so they're saying you can't run diagonally as fast as you can run straight forward and straight to the side. So, all right. If, and this is thrown in there, if your own rel equals 0, which they set it here to 1 so that you can walk. So if it's 0, you can't walk. You can't do anything. It takes your forward speed, puts it to 0, and your side speed and puts it to 0. So if you are not jumping, your jump state will be set to 1. Yeah, so if we aren't pressing the jump button. If jump button is being pressed and the jump state is equal to 1. So our jump state, JState I should say, is another property stored. And your Python script can of course access all these properties, which is great. So JState right there. So let's go back into here. Alright. Okay, so if we are pressing the jump button and we aren't already jumping, because so if we're pressing the jump button and we are not already jumping, because the jump state is 0. They set it 0 up here for a reason, because you aren't jumping by default. So if you press the jump button, you're not already jumping, set our jump speed to 6, change our jump state to 0, which means we are jumping, and then change own rel to 0, which means we can't jump forward or backward or to the side or anything like that. So then we're going to set our linear velocity, and that's our ACT, which is our floor move, which means linv, linear velocity. That's actually something that's documented in the API, so that's how you set the actual linear velocity. If it was like the teleportation function, which is like dmove, I believe, or whatever, it would be, you know, dmove or whatever they have set up in the API. You can look that up online. So it's going to take all of these things that I calculated, and input them in for the side speed, the forward speed, and the jump speed. And if they're all equal to 0, it's going to activate idle, and it's going to deactivate run and move. So else if the left control is positive, so like the crouch is pressed and the shift is pressed and the jump speed is 0, we're going to deactivate the idle and activate the run. So if we're holding down crouch and run at the same time and we're not in the air, it's going to deactivate idle and start run. So that's how I get out of a crouch. Else we're going to activate idle and deactivate run, and then since that's a different indent, that means that see, that's a logic block. Hold on, I'll figure that out quick a second. And I'm not sure why they have the activate action at the end there actually, but whatever, it works, so I'm happy. Alright, so that's the basics of this FPS Python script, and in the next one we're going to be changing this crouch function to do it a different way. So, alright, until next time.